Good morning, friends. Welcome to another live stream here with our special guest, Shifu Simplicity. Thank you, Shifu, for taking the time to share the teachings with us. Welcome to Geeta, Jayanta, and everyone else. So I see like a little number on the screen, but it hasn't checked in yet. So this is a series of teachings offered by Shifu Simplicity, who normally resides in Berlin, not in New Jersey like we are here at Empty Cloud Monastery. And she's the abbot of Miaofat Zentrum, which is an incredible Chan meditation center in Berlin. And she's also opening another center right outside for where she will be offering meditation retreats, etc. Shortly, I will post the link actually to her center in Berlin, so you can keep in touch with her. But without further ado, I'll pass it on to Shifu Simplicity to continue the series on the essence of the Mahayana teachings. Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Venerable, for inviting me. And now we will continue to talk about the text by Bodhidharma, the essence of Mahayana practice. Today is the fourth talk in the series. And those who have read the text, you notice there are 5 chapters in the text. And the first part of the text says, there are 2 ways to enter the path. So the first sentence is, to enter the great way, there are many paths, but essentially there are of 2 means, by principle and by practice. So we saw that the first chapter was about entering the great way, which the great way here is our true mind. How can we become enlightened to our true mind? How can we be enlightened, become enlightened to the absolute truth, to our Buddha nature? So there's mainly two means. The first one was to enter through the principle, that is for people with sharp roots of wisdom who encounter the teachings and read or hear something about the Mahayana mind, about the Buddha nature, and with triggered by the teachings, they can directly experience what that is. And experience here means not going through the thinking mind, but directly experiencing it through the true mind. And that is very abstract. And in that chapter, the first chapter, it is tried to describe what that actually is. What is that absolute level that is beyond duality of me and others, beyond duality of existence and emptiness, and beyond duality of practitioner and the practiced object. So that it's beyond all kind duality, and it's the absolute reality of life, which is also our nature of awareness. But for those who find that very abstract and who still don't know how to grasp it, there are other means to approach the practice, and those are the 4 following chapters, the ways by practice. And there is 4 chapters. The first one we discussed last time, accepting adversity. The following is adapting to conditions. The next, seeking nothing. And the last, acting in accordance with the Dharma. And so last time we talked about how do we practice, what is our attitude when we face adversities, when we face suffering in our lives. How do we practice, and how can we practice in a way that our mind is tuned in with the absolute reality? How can we adjust our mind? And so this everyone may be very motivated when we experience things we don't like, we experience adversities, difficulties. We have a high motivation because we want the difficulty to go away. So then we are inclined to work hard on our practice, to do our best to make ourselves feel better in that difficulty. That is the first way. How do we adjust our mind in times of difficulties? And one key point here is to understand the principle of causality, of cause and effect, and to understand that everything, all our world, the life, everything that is happening in our lives, no matter whether it be something to do with people or with external situations or our own body, our health, everything is the result of causes and conditions and is created by ourselves in the past, by our actions of our body, speech, and mind. And that is the deep understanding of karma. So we want to learn to take that attitude, to understand that we created that karma, and we take the responsibility for that karma, for that result, karmic result, and we don't want to complain. We don't want to blame others for our bad luck or our difficult situation, but we are aware that it's something that we created only by ourselves. So in that way, we learn to accept, and we learn not to resist any difficulties and to fight against it. We go with the flow, and our mind is calm, and in that way we can be in accord with our true mind. And the next chapter is basically very similar, but it's about how do we practice when we experience favorable conditions. And that is a way when we maybe not think about we could practice, because things go our way, we are successful, everything goes smoothly. We have a lot of uh, profitable situations, and we are very happy, very joyous about it. Everything goes the way we like. And but also that is a way to practice. Every moment of our life can be a moment when we can cultivate our mind. So not only when we suffer we think of practice, but actually also in the situations when everything goes well and we are successful, then it's also a good opportunity to practice. Because when we don't practice, we easily get lost in maybe in a lot of joy, and our mind is very agitated, or we get very attached to our success, to our what we gained, may it be material or may it be something personal relationships or other things. Then we easily get attached, and that is an obstacle to our practice. Or when we get totally excited by joy, it's also an obstacle to our practice because our mind is agitated. And what may also happen is that our mind gives rise to pride. We are successful, we see that we have accomplished something, and we think, oh, I'm great, I have done this great thing, and I'm a super person, and I'm very capable, and all those thoughts are already subtle or even or obvious thoughts of pride. And pride is also one of the obstacles for our practice to enlightenment. So how should we practice when we have good situations in life? I read the text. Second is the practice of adapting to conditions. Sentient beings are without a self, being steered by karmic conditions. Suffering and joy are experienced together as a result of causes and conditions. Any reward, blessing, or honor is a consequence of past causes. Nothing remains when the necessary conditions are exhausted. So, what is there to be joyful about? Knowing that success and failure depend on conditions, the mind remains unmoved by the wind of joy. The mind experiences neither gain nor loss. This is to be in harmony with the way. Therefore, it is called the practice of adapting to conditions. So here we see that it's about when we experience honor, we experience some kind of gain for our success, and it's very. The first sentence is sentient beings are without a self. That is the key teaching of the Buddha, that there is no permanent self. There is no entity that we can call the self, but we are attached to that. We always assume this, what you see here now, this body and this appearance, this voice, these thoughts, that is me. And this is a very deep-rooted, delusive thought that we have. And we are very attached to this, our own picture of this me. And that is the root for all our suffering, that we are attached to this ego, to this person, what we think we are. And the Buddha teaches us in various methods that we can contemplate. The body is made of the four elements. The body is just material elements. In the Buddha's time, they analyzed the body according to four elements: earth, water, fire, and wind, and to take them apart and see there's nothing left. There's no core inside a body that can be called an unchangeable, stable self. So this kind of meditation, there's several ways to meditate on it. It's very useful in any tradition of the Buddhist teaching. So here we see also Bodhidharma reminded us of this core teaching. There is no permanent self. So when we experience gain or success, who is experiencing that? There's no me that is experiencing. So why should I be so excited about it? That is one very important lesson here, that we contemplate about the person is made up of the five skandhas, the physical form, which itself is made of the four elements, and then the feelings, the other mental parts, the perceptions, volition, and consciousness. There's various translations on the five skandhas, but basically it's the form skandha, the material part, and five mental skandhas. And those five, they are also made, they have no permanent self, and they are impermanent, they are always changing. So when we think about what are our thoughts are always coming and going every moment, constantly being born and dying, appearing and disappearing, and there's a constant coming and going of thoughts, of feelings, of perceptions. And even consciousness is not a solid thing, that it's not an unchanging entity, but consciousness is also what we sometimes call the mind stream in Buddhism, because consciousness is not to be confused with what people think of a soul or something. But when you think of a soul, you think there's something unchanging. But consciousness also is constantly changing, like a river. It's never the same. Although when we just look at it from a distance, you might think it's always the same river, but the water inside is always different. So those are things we can contemplate to have a base of our practice that can be useful as well as in negative situations, as also in positive situations, that we don't get attached to the situation. We don't need to get overly upset or sad or angry, and we don't need to get overly happy and proud. So that we see that this, what we call our being, our person, is steered by karmic conditions. So sometimes we experience some good things in our lives, sometimes we experience bad things in our lives, and that seems to be always changing. Even in one day, maybe there's something, we miss the bus and something bad is happening, maybe we miss an appointment, and that's very unlucky, and we cause a lot of trouble. But later in life, maybe someone brings us a wonderful cake and we experience something nice. So these things, nice and unpleasant, change all the time. And why something is happening, nothing is happening just by accident. In Buddhism, there is no accident. Everything is karma. So we created this karma with our actions of body, speech, and mind. And going one step further, and we say our whole world is a creation of our own consciousness. There is nothing that is outside of consciousness. So the whole material world is just an image that is created by our own consciousness. So when there's nothing outside of our consciousness, then there's also nothing that comes from the outside and causes certain things to happen just by accident. And the law according to this, to which things appear and disappear, is the law of causes and conditions. When we create the causes through the karmic seeds that we sow through our actions of body, speech, and mind, and when the conditions ripen, the right conditions come together, some karmic event will manifest and will happen. When the conditions are not ripe, they don't match, then something cannot happen, but the seed is still there and it's still kind of waiting for the right situation, for the right conditions to come together so something can happen. It's like you plant a seed in the soil, and the seed needs the right temperature, the right daylight amount, the right amount of water, and the right soil and fertilizers, all these conditions, so the seed can sprout and the plant can grow. And so when we plant a seed in the winter, each seed has their growing time, and then when the conditions are ripe, one seed already sprouts maybe in March, the other one only in May or in June or maybe even later. So that depends on the conditions that each seed needs to ripen. So we create a lot of karmic seeds all the time, every day, every moment. We create new karmic seeds by our actions of body, speech, and mind. So also our mind, our thinking mind, that is constantly creating something. And when the conditions are right, something will be manifesting, some situations in our lives. So when we understand this, this is a deep teaching of the Buddha, and we have to always contemplate this. And here, when we see suffering and joy are experienced together as a result of causes and conditions. So sometimes we create positive things, we have joy. Sometimes we created negative things, the conditions are right, and we experience suffering or adversities. So it seems that we are always tossed around by those causes and conditions. And we cannot change what we have created in the past. Of course, there's ways you can repent your past karmic negative impacts, And but what we can do is we can start to create our future. So we can train our mind to focus on creating wholesome situations, wholesome causes, positive seeds from now on. And this now is every moment. And so when we have negative situations, we can start to build up a positive potential. And this way we can be active because the future starts next moment. So it's not something next life or in 10 years, but the future starts right now. So we can change our future when we start to change the causes. So this principle of causality and also how we can influence our lives within this principle is very important. And now we come to the point, the next part. Any reward, blessing, or honor is a consequence of past causes. So whatever we experience now is something when we have some success. Let's say we have success in our business, then that is because we have created a lot of good causes in the past. In the past can be in the past few months or past few years, we have been working diligently, but not only that we have been working on our success, on our business, but also in general, we have created positive karmic situations with people. We created wholesome connections with people. We were friendly. We helped people. We were generous. We donated to others. And all this way, we created good karma. We created good seeds. And not only this life, but also many lifetimes before. So maybe last life or a few lifetimes before, we already started working on this good karma. We created a lot of wholesome causes, wholesome connections with people. So this life, we meet those people again in, let's say, in our professional field, and we talk about a project, and because we have a good connection with the other person, they immediately accept our idea and we can work together very smoothly and come to a good result. So that is not only something that I have created alone in this lifetime. I created the causes maybe many lifetimes before, and also it's not something that causes and conditions are a complex system. It's not only me alone that makes this possible. For every success, we rely on the support of many other people. For example, your success in your business, you present your idea, you need the support of maybe your business partner who also likes your idea, who is also diligent, and the bank who may give you a loan, and so you can start working on your project. So the bank needs to trust you. And so why is the bank trusting you? Because you have a good karmic relationship with that, maybe that person in the bank. And so a lot of things come together. When you produce something, you have your employees who are working hard, they're working together, and only when you were only alone in this world, you could not come to this success. So it's very important to acknowledge that it's not only me that is alone responsible for this success, but there's many other people and positive connections involved that this success is taking place. For example, my teacher, Grandmaster Weijue, he was a very great teacher, a great monk, and he meditated in the mountains in Taiwan. And then he started to have compassion and accept disciples. And they created a small monastery they built with their own hands. And then there were more and more disciples coming, and the Grand Master wanted to build a big place for many people to come. And so he made the vow to create a big monastery so everyone who wants to practice Chan practice can come and have a safe place to practice. And, and then once he made the vow, he went out and he made a lot of connections with people. So he talked to a lot of people about his project. And a lot of people supported him. So out of nothing, he had no money. He created this huge monastery that was opened in 2001. That is now 20 years ago, Zhongtai Chan Monastery in Taiwan. So and he never said that is my monastery. He always said that's the monastery of all of us who made this possible. So he never took the credits just by himself and said, oh, yeah, I did this great place. And people, of course, they said, oh, it's your monastery. And he always said, this is the monastery of everyone who contributed. And there's so many people, thousands of people who made this monastery possible. Some people donated huge amounts of maybe 100,000 or more of dollars, US dollars, and other people maybe just donated $1 or other people donated their know-how, their time, their expertise. And there were people who may not contribute this way, but there were people in the administration who signed the permissions. And so there's a lot of people were involved. And even now there's a lot of people involved to make this monastery running and to support many monks and nuns. And also the monks and nuns who are living there, they are making this monastery alive. Otherwise, you would only have an empty building, and that's not a monastery. A monastery needs monks and nuns. So everyone who's living or who used to live there contributed to this place of this big monastery. So, and the Grand Master never said of himself that it's his place or he created it. He always shared the merits with everyone else. And that's a way how we could see how humble he was and how he had this deep wisdom that it's all causes and conditions. If it was only him alone and alone, he couldn't have done it because he needs the support of so many people. So this is a way how we can look at things when we have success in our lives. Instead of thinking, oh, I'm so great and I'm so talented and my company is so successful and I'm a salesperson, I have sold so many products or contracts or whatsoever, always thinking me, me, me. Now we could see, oh, there we share the merits with everyone else who was involved, and we are grateful that there are so wonderful conditions that this wonderful success could be part of it. And that's a way how we can protect ourselves from the poison of pride and arrogance. And also when we see that there are other people who are not successful, then we shouldn't look down on them and think, oh, they are maybe not talented, they don't know so much, they don't know as much as me. So we can see the conditions for them maybe at this moment are not favorable. So that's why they cannot come to the same success. But we also know that the conditions will not last forever. So whatever success we created, may it be in the business or the big monastery, that will not be permanent. It will not be everlasting. Like the Zhongtai monastery, many people have left, many new people have come, many in those 40 years of Grand Master, also many people has died who started off with him and on that project, and he himself also entered nirvana. So the place is not the same. And but so it's always changing all the time. And when we are aware that our success is also just very temporary, it's causes and conditions, and they change all the time. So what is there to be so happy about? Why would we want to get so excited about it? Of course, we can be happy and grateful for what we have achieved, but be aware of not be over excited with joy or with pride. So here it goes. Nothing remains when the necessary conditions are exhausted. So when there's no more support for our project, our idea, then it will collapse. Businesses go up and down. That's normal. And everyone who knows economics knows that there's always some up and down, and the curve cannot always go up endlessly. There will always be a peak, and then it will go down again. And so when the market is satisfied, then the product cannot sell well anymore. When everyone already has the product, or there's the product is outdated, some new product will come up that is more modern, that is more practical. The old product will go down. So no matter, well, let's look at the cell phones. No, when it's very easy to see that development. When the first cell phones came out, everyone was very excited. And now when we look at the first generation, it looks like an antique object. And then the first smartphones came out, and even now the first generation looks very old now, because every few years there's some new smartphone or some new kind of phone is coming out. So the conditions are always changing. The success will only last for a short period of time. Some conditions change. So why should we attach to that success? It will not last. So when we see this clearly, this is a way how we can keep our mind calm. We just see the way the things as they are, just very neutral, without attachment, without too much excitement about it. So here it says, so what there, why should we be joyful about it? We know that the things are impermanent. We know the success is only a small peak, and it will go down again. And so why should we be proud? Why should we be overjoyous about something that is only impermanent? So that is the attitude that we can take on, so our mind doesn't get stirred up by the emotions that come about when we are successful, or when we become famous, or when we have a successful product, or we are good in our studies, we get good grades. And also the same good grades, we need to have good teachers to learn our stuff. We need to have good textbooks that were written by good authors. And so we can be grateful for a lot of people who contributed to our success in our studies. Knowing that success and failure depend on conditions, the mind remains unmoved by the wind of joy. So we try to keep our mind always calm. Our mind that we see that everything is conditioned, so we try to keep our mind even. We just see the things as they are, and we follow the conditions. When we see there's positive conditions, we go along. We make use of positive conditions. We don't hesitate. When we see something positive can be done, we are not lazy. We become active, and we do it actively, something good. When we see the conditions are not favorable, we don't get upset or angry. We just hide, we just wait, and we use the time for our practice. Also, the Bodhidharma himself, when he came to China, he tried to teach the mind ground Dharma, the Dharma of the great way of Buddha nature, of sudden enlightenment. So he tried to teach King Liang and or Emperor Liang. And when he realized Emperor Liang was not ready for this subtle teaching, then he went to the north and he also tried to teach the king there, but the king also didn't understand. So when he realized people didn't understand, he saw the conditions are not right, and he went to Shaolin Monastery and meditated in the cave for 9 years. And so he didn't waste his time, and he didn't say, oh, it doesn't work, I go back to India, China is no good. But he saw maybe in the future the conditions were ripening, and I just wait, and while waiting he would cultivate his mind, he would just dwell on his true awareness. And this way, time passes very quickly because the true mind is beyond space and time. So when he just withdraws to his true mind, he can stay there for many years. And then one day, Master Huike, his disciple, came up, and then he started to teach. So the same as when we know when conditions are right, we follow the conditions. We do the right thing, we do positive things, we use our wisdom to see what is the right thing to do at the right time. And someone who has great wisdom can see very far and can see what are the small, tiny causes that I can do right now to create great actions at some moment in the future. And the great actions are always actions of helping other beings. And so we follow the conditions, and also following the conditions has to do some, in Chinese we say 随缘. 随缘 means to go along, to go with the flow. And that's something that a lot of Western people, they have difficulties with. To just flow, go with the flow and see what is the temporary conditions, what is right, what is the right thing to do, and to just go along with it, and not to always go and fight the situations, and not always think, oh, this is I like, this I don't like, but to be neutral about it. To see now there's a lot of changes in society, there's changes in the world, and we need to have the wisdom to see, to just go with the flow, to see what is the moment where we need to bring up resistance, and when is the moment to just go with the flow and to save our time and energy, and just go along. And when we go along, we can keep our mind calm. Here it goes on. The mind remains unmoved by the wind of joy. We have in Buddhism, we talk about the 8 winds. The 8 winds are praise and criticism, fame and defame, gain and loss, suffering and joy. So it's 4 pairs of opposites, and we tend to always see we want to get the nice things and we don't want the unpleasant things. But actually the nice things can also confuse our mind, and as so as the unpleasant things. So we don't want to be, our mind doesn't want to be stirred up, also not by praise. For example, when we get praised, we easily give rise to pride and arrogance. So we need to be very careful when we experience those fame or praise or happiness, joy, or gain in our as the positive parts of those 4 pairs, because then we easily give rise to pride. So here we want to train our mind to just be clear about what is the situation as it is. We see there is praise, we see there's gain, we just see it, we know, oh, it's only causes and conditions, and our mind stays stable. Our mind is even, unmoved. And that is our everyday mind, our Ping Chang Xin. Our mind is always calm, is always clear, but the mind is unmoving, not moved by the outside situations. And when we train ourselves in our daily lives, we can use those situations to practice, to start to drop our attachments also to the positive things, and to start to train ourselves not to always seek after the positive things, the agreeable, pleasant things. But we see, oh, now there's gain. Okay, I see there's gain. And then there's loss. Okay, I see there's loss. And the mind is calm. And when the mind is calm, the mind is clear, and then the mind has wisdom. And this is the way how we can be in accord with our true nature. Because our true mind, our Buddha nature, is unmoved by the outside conditions. The true mind is always even. The true mind is always unmoving, and it's always clear and alert. So it's calm and alert at the same time. This pure mind, this Buddha nature, everyone has it. And we can train. We are not in accord with this because our mind normally is stirred up, and we normally use our thinking mind. But we can try to switch from this thinking mind to the mind that is just clear and alert, without making judgments, without discriminating, without like and dislike. And this we can train in our daily life. We can see where we have like and dislike all the time. There's something, I eat something, oh, I like the taste. Then we see there's like. I dislike the taste. Oh, I don't want to finish my plate. I don't want to finish this drink. It's horrible. So, but instead we can just see, okay, this drink is not pleasant, but I try to keep my mind even, and I can still finish it when it's not poisonous or gone bad or something. And when it's gone bad, I don't need to be upset about it. When I eat a grape or something that accidentally I didn't pay attention and it was already bad, then maybe I just spit it out politely, and I don't need to eat it. But I don't make a big fuss, oh, why is this bad? And so I just do it, and the mind is still calm and unmoving. And this is something we can train in our daily life. We can observe, first of all, see where I always have like and dislike. And then we try to uh, drop the thought of like and dislike in that moment when we experience it. And then we can return to just being aware, just being clear, without judging, without discriminating anything. Just the mind is just the knowing mind, just the knowing without adding any thoughts, because the thinking mind is not yet the true mind. The true mind is the mind that is just, we can say, more intuitive. That's a different mode. And here in the text, we want to return to this mode of the true mind, the mode of the not thinking mind. And we, last time in the text, we had the term wu wei, the non-action. And we, I think in another next chapter, we will come across that again. We will talk about that again. That is the mind that is not creating thoughts, that is just acting in a direct way without thinking. But nevertheless, without thinking does not mean stupid, but it means, on the contrary, very clear and alert, but not undergoing the thinking, the logical or emotional process. And so this we can train our mind by not being moved by the eight winds that is here. And in this chapter especially, it's the wind of joy that is talked about in this chapter. The mind, here the text is translated, is experiencing neither gain or loss. Actually, in Chinese, it says, Xin Wu Zhen Jian. The mind is not, it's here not experiencing, but the mind is not increasing or decreasing. So the pure mind, when something unpleasant is happening or we are unhappy, the mind, the pure mind, is not decreasing. And when we are happy, the mind is not increasing. The mind is not gaining anything or losing anything. But it's our thinking mind that is always stirred up and is always moving, and we are always thinking. We gain something when we experience pleasure, and we lose something when we experience displeasure or suffering or discomfort. But that's also an illusory thought. Our true mind is neither increasing nor decreasing. It's always the same unmoving and clear mind. And we want to come back to this mind, because this is our nature of awareness, which we want to experience, what we want to get enlightened to. So when we practice this way as described in the text, this is to be in harmony with the way. So the way here is the nature of awareness. The way is, we call the middle way, reality. That middle way doesn't mean the way, the middle between two, but the middle is the way of non-duality. Also the duality that is left or right, existence or not existence, good or bad. So the mind is beyond all that duality, and that is the way. Therefore, this is called the practice of adapting to conditions. So in this chapter, we hear about how to practice with favorable conditions. How in favorable conditions can we adjust our mind that we can always return to our true nature, to our Buddha nature or our nature of awareness. So far for now. Now we still have a few minutes for questions.
Thank you so much, Venerable. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That was beautiful. And thank you, friends, for joining in and asking all these questions. We have quite a few questions for you, Venerable. But first, hello to Anita, Michael, Venerable Vimalanyani, who is finishing her quarantine upstairs, but is tuning in. Hello, Kumu, Michael, Saram, and Putrika from the other side of the world. She's in Sri Lanka, tuning in. So Gita asks, Shifu, in your understanding of the Dhamma, in the formless realms are four aggregates suppressed with just consciousness and mental object operating.
I don't understand the question, sorry.
Maybe Gita, if you can.
Oh, in the formless realms, I see. In the form, well, today we didn't really talk about the formless realms, but in the formless realms, it's a state of deep concentration. You can only enter either as a deva, so if it's when you talk as a realm, it's a deva realm, and only a person who in this life has practiced very deep levels of concentration, where they already, you can say, suppress the idea, so there is an idea of a certain thought about emptiness, but that's not emptiness in the Buddhist sense. So there is still a consciousness. So there's still somehow the ego, but the person understands that there's no physical body, that there's no form, but there's still a consciousness. So there's still some kind of attachment. And so in that sense, when that person is born in that realm because of intense meditative concentration, that concentration eventually will fade away, and the person will still then be reborn in other realms of samsara. So that's why we call that is still in the realms of the samsara. If so, that is, I don't know. I mean, the talk about the formless realm doesn't really have much to do with the talk of Bodhidharma today. But when you remain in that realm for a very long lifetime, because in the Deva realm that lifetime is very long. But when that lifetime is used up, your concentration will fade away, and then you can be reborn again as a human. That means you have not overcome birth and death. You have not reached that arhat state. And the problem is that when you train in this kind of training and you don't have the teachings of emptiness, then it's very difficult to make that leap to overcome birth and death, because you are still attached to your view of your method. That's why the Buddha is not propagating those kind of teachings, but the Buddha is directly teaching us to meditate on emptiness, so we don't get caught up in that level of consciousness. The five skandhas in Mahayana and Theravada, I would say, are the same. Yeah, I think I mean, of course I'm more familiar with the Mahayana way of explaining things, but as I understand, the explanation of the five skandhas is the same. So you can, in both traditions, you can meditate on the five skandhas. Another question? Karma, cause and effect, is a universal law in the Mahayana, but also in the Theravada teachings. That's general Buddhism. How is the practice of principle 1 and 2 different? Yeah, it's actually it's not so different. The only difference is a little bit is the situation we are in. So basically in both situations you are looking at causality, and looking at that causes and conditions and your karma you created. But the difference is that in first is how we react to different kind of situations. Like when we experience suffering and adversity, we have a different reaction to the experienced situation than when we experience pleasant situations of praise and fame and success. So it's only mainly it's different in the way of the situation, but the practice itself is very similar. The Chinese is Sui Yuan. I don't know how to spell it here. No idea how to do that. I don't know how to write in the chat. Sui Yuan. Faith, can you write it in Chinese with Chinese characters? Yes, right. There, you see it there in the comments. Sui Yuan. Thank you. Another question? Okay, when there's no more questions, I think we can finish the talk for today. And on Saturday, there is a talk at the same time on the 4 great vows. 四弘誓愿.
Thank you, Venerable. So yes, on Saturday morning, Venerable will be offering a teaching, a special teaching on the 4 how many vows are there?
4 great vows.
4 great vows. Great, thank you. My Theravada practice interfered with remembering the number of vows. But yeah, with the 4 great vows. So at 8 p.m. on Saturday, New York City time, a special meeting with Shifu Simplicity. I won't be there, so there will be a volunteer that will be hosting that event on Saturday morning. But we will continue this particular series next Wednesday, and we're on retreat here at Empty Cloud Monastery. So the live streams, they will all be actually blasts from the past. So we're sharing some recordings from retreats from Ajahn Punadhammo in the past. He gave several teachings at the Rockaway Summer House, our past retreat center in Rockaway Beach. So that's what you will be seeing during our usual live streams for the end of the week. But we will resume this weekend and next week. All right, so thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Shifu Simplicity, for sharing the Dhamma as usual. So we can end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, 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 and Amitabha.
Amitabha.